for all the talk about COVID and international events, the biggest issue showing up in the polls is that campaign perennial cost of living. It's a sobering reminder that most Australian households, certainly those in key marginal seats, keep a very close watch on the cost of essentials. I don't need to tell you that. You're at the supermarket like me and you have a look at what the price is at the Bowser. You know, everything's going up. In a number of major metropolitan cities, fuel's getting close to or has already hit $2 a litre. And as reported in the Weekly Times last week, red meat is now 4.5 times more expensive than chicken, with beef averaging 3 times the price of lamb. And not to mention the price rises in electricity, which we know will go out of control if we keep shutting down these power stations. US election strategists coined the catch cry, "It's the economy, stupid," and not much has changed if you want to win over ordinary voters. So let's see what my next guest makes of all of this. It's time for Word on the Street. This is, of course, with Erin Molan. She joins me now from Sydney. Every pollster, Erin, every campaign guru that I'm speaking with at the moment says cost of living is biting. So what do you make of it? Who's likely to do better here on this issue in the election?
Good evening to you, Peter, and to all of your viewers. I guess whichever political party can convince the Australian public that they are the most qualified to reduce these costs. I know that you've been very critical of a lot of the topics that have dominated the news cycle over the past few weeks, including Techsgate, politicians calling each other names, whether someone smiled at someone or didn't. These are the issues that really matter to Australian people, what they're paying for petrol, what they're paying for meat, what they're paying for electricity. And this is not just an issue here in Australia, this is global. There was a headline in a UK newspaper today that read, "In Britain, cost of living crisis means that for some, getting by will become a luxury." That's absolutely terrifying. It is front of mind for every single Australian. Take a listen.
It's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Gas, electricity, it's never ending.
Everything's going up anyway, except wages.
Very hard to have an average income or middle class income and be able to afford the price of housing, living, groceries, etc.
Everything is getting really expensive, but what do? We have to work hard and make sure that we make ends meet.
I've been here all my life. I own my home. But I don't see how my next generation of children and siblings and nieces and nephews can afford to live in Sydney. It's just not obtainable for the current standard of working that we have.
It's becoming a pipe dream, wanting to buy property, let alone somewhere livable to rent. It's certainly uncomfortable.
It's just getting more expensive all the time. It's never getting cheaper. It's never holding steady. So we need to do something.
Cost of fuel is obviously impacted by what's happening around the world at the moment. You look at the situation with Russia and Ukraine, with China and Taiwan. Mm-hmm. But one thing we can do in this country, and my dad, I use the word harp on, but it's probably not fair because he's right in what he says about shoring up our fuel supply. Domestically, we only have 30 days if suddenly things were to happen and we stop the importation of fuel, which at the moment is 90%. And in Labor's defence, Anthony Albanese came out with a policy about a month ago about having a strategic fleet that would lessen our reliance upon the importation and I guess build our resilience here in this country. So they're things that the government can do as well that would help lessen the cost.
Look, you're spot on, and there was not one person in those Vox pop grabs. Yes, that's Sydney, but I think it's right around the country from what pollsters tell me. There was not one person there that says, you know what, I'm doing okay, I might be tight, but I think cost of living's under control. Not one person had that line. I'm going to go to another issue because you're a sports journalist and I need a take on Beijing. The Winter Olympics wrapped up last night and there was a whole lot of propaganda. We saw all that, no crowds, etc. But one of the stories that really struck me coming out of the Games was about the Russian young girl figure skater, the coach, and the treatment of Russian athletes. Now, how on earth, you explain to me, Erin, how on earth does the 15-year-old girl still get to compete after she was caught using banned drugs?
This is such a heartbreaking story, Peter, and nobody wants to see any drug taking in sport, any drug taking at all. The drugs that she had found in her system aren't drugs that help you with peak performance. These are drugs that help these children, and they are children, survive the brutal training regimes that they are put through. This is awful. For starters, there's a rule in the Olympics that if you are caught with performance-enhancing substances, as WADA describes them, if you're under 16, you are allowed to still compete because, and I want to quote this because it's so ridiculous, protected person because she's aged under 16 and therefore stopping her competing would cause her irreparable damage. Unbelievable. Anyone who watched her perform, anyone who watched the interaction between not just her coach but a choreographer and other members of that Russian team, she is already irreparably damaged. The world watching on needs to take a stand against this treatment. It is child abuse. It is appalling. There is no consistency in the way that WADA operates. The Olympics have completely lost the plot. You look at Shayna Jack as well. Her life was completely ruined. You know, there was a documentary that actually came out in Germany, I think mid-year last year, that looked at how WADA works and how ridiculous some of these things that they're able to detect in the blood that don't actually then correlate to an athlete trying to do the wrong thing. The whole system needs a complete overhaul. The athletes are the losers in this, and the Olympics is suffering immeasurably.
Oh, spot on. I think it's got real reputational damage coming out of the latest round of scandal. Erin Molan, thank you as always.